Hey friends, welcome back to Huge Head Studio. My name is Robbie, and this week we're doing one more holiday-themed sculpt, the big man himself, Santa Claus. But are we sculpting just a regular old boring shopping mall Santa Claus? No, we're making a biker Santa. There was a thought process that led us here, I promise. At first, I had planned to build a South Pole Santa, which would basically be Santa if he was from the South. You know, a Florida man Santa, if you will. But then I started thinking, what if instead of like a sleeveless southern flannel, he wore a red cut with top and bottom rockers? But then I realized, well, he's not wearing a cut if he's not in a club. So then I had to figure out what kind of motorcycle club Santa would be in, and then it just kept snowballing from there. So biker Santa it is. And I'm diving into this with a loose plan, but I'm honestly winging it as hard as I can, so mistakes will be made and lessons will be learned, and this week's biggest lesson learned is that Super Sculpey is not the answer for all situations. It's really firm and great for details, but on larger scale sculpts like this, it becomes kind of a chore because it takes a lot of extra effort to blend everything nice and smooth. I actually learned while working on next week's project that a softer clay like Sculpey 3 would have made this a lot easier, but for this one, Super Sculpey is all we have in the studio, so we're rolling with it. So after making a big old chunky base out of armature wire and aluminum foil, I start roughing out his face just enough to make sure the proportions are acceptable enough in comparison to the body, and then squish it onto the neck to give it a place to sit. After that, I start filling out the body. I'm going for that fat fit look, you know, like the build that former football players acquire after spending years in the gym and pounding calories, but then the playing days end and the gym visits slow down, but the calories stay. They end up with a nice protective layer over whatever muscle's left, and by they I mean me. Anyway, that's the build Santa's getting. Since I'm working with a firm Sculpey, I think it's easier to keep everything nice and smooth by building the mass little by little rather than slapping on large chunks of clay at a time. I apply a layer of rolled out clay to the armature wire to act as a base and then apply additional bits of clay upon that as needed to slowly form the muscle. You know, I had also originally planned on his arms being down at his sides, bent at the elbow, kind of resting on his belly, but I raised the armature in the early stages while working on the stomach, and apparently I never thought to put him back down. So we're going to treat it as a happy little accident and just embrace the Fonz look. Hey. Next up is the hands, and I was going to give him some classic Santa white gloves, but then I decided I really didn't want him to look like a Looney Tunes character or Mickey or a butler. So I decided to switch lanes and do mittens instead, which ended up looking like boxing gloves, so I totally nailed that decision. But I tried to save the issue by using the aluminum foil texture trick I learned last week to give them some texture and try to make our boxing glove mittens look soft and cozy. That hand is done, but I want him to hold on to something in the other hand which does not exist yet, so I'll have to build that first before I can shape the other hand around it. But in the meantime, I work on adding some pockets and details to his cut before adding some flattened bits of clay for all the patches. I want this Santa to be a hardcore biker, so we're going all out with top and bottom rocker and club colors in between. We may have forgot to add the MC patch, but it's fine. Creative choice is my excuse, totally not just too lazy to go back and add it. After that, I quickly make a little bottle for the other hand and then throw it in the oven to bake. While the bottle bakes, I get to work on his head. I have no reference at all for the face, so I'm just winging it as I said earlier and sculpting Santa how he looks in my head, which leads to a rather unfortunate face. But I'm sure everything will look better once we get the beard on. Beards fix everything. If you have an unfortunate face like mine, then just grow a beard. That way you still have an unfortunate face, but at least you have a beard. Once I have the face more or less shaped out, I need to add some texture and wrinkles to make his face look nice and weathered. This Santa spends Christmas flying through cold winds and snow, and then spends the rest of the year in the sun on his bike, so his face absolutely looks like a strip of old leather. After that, we need to add his hat, and I decided to keep it simple and just go with a classic Santa hat, but maybe place it a little lower on his head, closer to his eyes like a beanie. Once we get the hat shaped out, we use our handy dandy ball of aluminum foil to give it the same texture as the mittens, and then shove the little pom-pom or fuzzball or whatever that thing is and throw it in the oven to bake. While that bakes and the bottle is cooled, we shove the bottle in the hand that we somehow forgot to film and make sure the mitten has a nice tight grip on the bottle. After that comes the beard. I carved in a bunch of grooves to imply direction, focusing on the shape of the hair instead of individual strands. It's not perfect, but it serves its purpose for the level of detail we're going for, which is in the realm of not great, but good enough. And with that, the sculpting is done and we're ready to paint, but first, help me clean this palette. Ain't that just satisfying? It's like finding a Jolly Rancher in your pocket, just brings a smile to your face. Anyway, the paint. I decided to try a new technique on this one by layering thin coats of red, yellow, and then a pinkish skin tone. I brush the paint on, then dab it with a sponge to spread it out and leave a stained, splotchy layer behind. I repeat that process with the other washes, letting little bits of the underlayer show through so the skin feels deeper and more realistic. I've seen this technique before, but I've never tried it myself, so this attempt is definitely full of mistakes, but still, I can see the potential, and with more practice, it might actually turn into something pretty cool. For now, it's good enough. That'll just have to do. Just the story of my life. Next, I apply a coat of bright, Christmassy red to the cut, hat, and gloves, which definitely doesn't help with making them not look like boxing gloves, but whatever. Then I go in with a darker wash and brush it on so it settles into the recesses and helps bring out the depth. It also lightly stains the surface, which gives the fabric some character and makes it feel more worn and used instead of flat and cartoony. After that, I dry brush on a lighter red, which is also known as pink, to add some slight highlights here and there, which is intended to push that depth even further. I let that dry and move on to his beard to add a quick layer of off-white to get rid of all the excess paint from the skin layers before applying the same off-white to color his eyes. Then while that dries, I go back to the body and start painting in all the patches on his cut. At this point, I still had no idea what the MC should be called. I considered the Arctic Outlaws or the Naughty Listers, but for some reason I'm drawn to alliteration, so I considered the Reindeer Reapers or the Blizzard Brothers, but ultimately, I decided to go with the Merry Misfits, which is dumb. Yeah, I know it's dumb. It's so dumb, but let's be honest, this whole concept is pretty dumb. I mean, my hobby is recording myself while I make mounted heads or monster versions of scary Karens that shop on Black Friday or little evil versions of the Elf on the Shelf, but dumb or not, I enjoy it, and I'm a strong believer in the ancient practice of you do you. Anyway, with the patches all painted, I add a bit of yellow grime to make them look aged and a little dirty. I do the same on the cuffs of the mittens because Santa's a big old boy and I'm sure he produces some heat and stank under those mittens, so there's no way they'd stay nice and clean and white for long. I apply the same yellow color to his beard and wipe away the surface, so just like with the washes on the clothes, the color settles into the recesses so the beard looks more layered and not so flat. For his eyes, I decided to go with a bright and cheery blue, but while painting them, my hand decided to go rogue and dabbed a splotch of blue onto his eyebrow, which just doesn't look right. So I dipped a brush into some isopropyl alcohol and rubbed at it until the blue and a few layers under the blue disappeared. Then, since I decided that my hand couldn't be trusted to paint a simple circle, I dipped a small ball stylus into the paint and poked it into the eye to give us a nice clean pupil. With that done, I grabbed some pan pastels and brush them onto the nose and cheeks to get that classic rosy Santa look. I prefer to use pastels for this part because I find them to be a little bit more cooperative than paint, and they just seem to blend a lot easier at this stage. After that, I apply another yellow wash to the hat to just give it a little bit more color before adding a bit of UV resin to the eyes to make them look nice and glossy. Then I cure the resin with our magical purple flashlight before painting on some simple eyebrows. At this point, we're mostly done, but the body just still doesn't look right. I feel like it's missing something, but then I realized a biker Santa would most definitely have tattoos. So I painted on a handful of corny little Christmas-themed tattoos and then dabbed on a thin layer of that pinkish skin tone I used before to try to make the tattoos look old and set into his skin instead of looking, well, painted on. Last and honestly least, I figured the mount deserved a little more attention than just being painted black, so I slapped on a layer of Mod Podge and sprinkled on a handful of this fake snow that I still don't know why I have in my studio. And with that, everything is all done and we're finally ready to put this bad boy biker Santa together and take some fancy little shots of him slowly spinning in circles. And that's it, what I think Santa Claus would look like if he were the leader of an MC, complete with a festive red cut, a big jug of milk in one hand, and a happy little thumbs up in the other. Well, I hope you liked the video. If you did, it'd probably behoove you to like and subscribe so you can keep up with whatever kind of nonsense we get into next time. Next time, we might do something strange. Maybe even some Stranger Things. But I reckon that about does it for this one, so thanks for watching and happy holidays to all.